Well, today I'm going to be going over one of the more, how do I put this? The more complicated, I suppose would be the way of putting it, mechanics of Dragon Soul today. And definitely something most people generally don't think about until later in the game. I'm going over clothing today. So, clothing in Dragon Soul is fairly important, usually only once you're actually at the end game, because it's kind of the main way you push your build further. But today I'm going to be going over the aspects of clothing that you'll probably be using throughout the entire playthrough. Well, not really after your entire playthrough, but as you kind of level up and reach each milestone within your level system. So the way I'm going to be separating it today in this video will be level 0 to level 500, 501 to 1000, 1001 to 1500, 1501 to 2000, and then 2000 to the level cap. So, we'll be starting today with the 0 to 500 clothing. Generally speaking, 0 to 500 clothing, you're really not worried too much about kind of what you wear. It doesn't really apply much to you. Like, you can maybe get, because at the end of the day, the most of the clothing you're going to be getting from this point is going to be fairly low and it's going to be kind of irrelevant. But, for example, if I had to make a decision for clothing, I would probably personally go for at sub 500. If you really wanted to min max and get the best armor you could probably get, I would either go with the Dr. Zero pants or the Dr. Zero set, which you get from the Dr. Zero raid, which you'll have to do throughout your story. Which this will be good for like early game key builds, and then the Red Ribbon Grunt pants would be useful for like early game strength builds. That's pretty much the only thing I can really suggest for 0 to 500, because at that point, you're not really going to get really any clothing from 0 to 500 that's going to be actually of any importance. So from 501 to 1000, there's a bit more. The general blue clothing set would probably be pretty nice for key builds. There's also a cyber set would also be really useful. I would definitely recommend this as well. I'm kind of backtracking here, but I just remembered about it. So the cyber set, which you get from the cyber boss, which is in the back of the Red Ribbon army. There'll be a little boss that spawns up there that you can farm. He is a pretty okay set. So the other 500 plus sets I would go for might be something similar to like, let's see, where was it? I had one up here. The Droid 13 set would probably be the main one I would go for. So if you fight Android 13 up to when you hit level 1000 would be the armor set I would try to go for. Would be the main thing I would suggest farming, because it will be a good boost for all your decent starting stats. But again, at this level, your clothing really it doesn't really matter. At this level, your main way of getting power will be just through leveling up your forms and getting your stats increased, stuff like that. Finally, for the 1001 to 1500 rec area, this is when I would actually start having some proper clothing recommendations. Let's see, where was it? So the Droid 21 pants, the Droid 21 set would be a very good start. The like Droid 21's set would be pretty good. Turles' armor set would also be for the 500 to 1000. I would recommend Turles' armor set if you're more of a key person than you are a strength. But at the end of the day, I still think this would be just your starting. But at the end of the day, you're going to want Android 13's clothing. Then for 1500 would be the Demon armor set. The Demon armor set would be pretty good. Like if you can get the Demon armor shirts. You get this from fighting the demons that are floating around in East City. That'd be to the... I can show you where that is really quick. I can show you where they are really quick, but they're fairly easy to kill, especially once you get to that point of level. But again, just like every other thing, clothing isn't really too useful or important at that stage of the game. The only time that clothing really becomes useful is once you're past 2000. So you would pretty much fight these guys right here in order to get the demon clothing set, which would be an okay set, I suppose, for 1400. But then for 1500 flat, I would definitely recommend the the Droid 21 set, which you fight by doing Droid 21. which that requires a very specific quest guide, which is probably a video I'll do on its own, how to fight Android 21 in particular, because it's kind of its own little quest gimmick in of itself. It's kind of a pain. If she is up and some people are farming her, she would be right over here. It'd be right there, but it's kind of irrelevant right now. So for 1500 plus is when you actually start getting into the really good clothing sets. This is when I can actually start recommending you to go out and get these clothings, because these ones will actually be important. These ones would definitely be the Demon 21, which is again also from 21. This is from a specific version of Droid 21 that you may fight while you're farming her. This would be a clothing set I would recommend. He's a very good clothing set. This will probably cover you the entirety of your tiers in this area. You could also maybe go for Nappa's set if you really want to be more specific on a specific build set, but Droid 21 set is definitely just better, as you can tell. This para, I would also recommend you try to get Vegeta's armor, which is a boss Vegeta that spawns in the Galactic Patrol area. He's a fairly decently hard fight, but if you can get his armor set in this area, this would be pretty good starting legendary clothing. The next set for after Demon 21 is when you hit 2000. This is now where all the important clothing sets are. The first one I would recommend after going for the Demon 21 set, once you hit level 2000, would probably actually end up being Cell's set, which you can do by yourself. It is right here, the perfect Cell set, or the less nice, wherever it ended up, I don't remember, it moved around. Here it is. The Cell tier 1 set would be a good one if you can get this. So when you fight Cell, he has his different tiers and sets, and he has a chance of just dropping a bunch of different armor. So I'll definitely recommend the Cell set of this tier, especially if you can get the perfect Cell set. This would probably be your best clothing you can get for a little while until you start doing the Broly raid, which now is when I will start talking about the actual clothing you're going to want to be, at the end of the day, hunting for. So to start is the Caulifla set and the Kale set, or Hail set, I guess. These two clothing sets would be something you would definitely want to get your hands on when you're at level 2200. These will be basically some helpful armor and clothing you can get while you're currently farming for the next tier of clothing, which will be the Broly Z set, which I don't know if I actually have any pieces of right now. It doesn't look like it. Yeah, there'll be a set you can get, which is the Broly Z set. It's probably the second best clothing you're probably going to want to end up hunting for, because it's technically, like, you have the Broly Torn set, but this isn't really that great. Which is why I'd say the perfect Cell set would be better than this armor set. But the Broly Z set is definitely something you want to get. You can get that from obviously from the Broly raid itself, which would be on here. You'd be looking for these clothing pieces right here: the Broly Z shirt, Broly Z pants, and Broly Z shoes. These would be basically what you would want to get as your second tier of clothing sets. I would show you the actual set right now, but I don't have any currently. But this is basically your second best clothing you're going to want to actually get, and this will last you for quite a while. The final piece of clothing you're going to want to actually get your hands on, and this is the ending clothing currently at this current moment when I'm recording this video, this Halfless set is the best set in the game currently. I do not know if this will change in the future, or depending on whenever you're watching this, but at this current exact moment, on this day of my recording, this clothing set is the best you can get your hands on. There is no clothing set better. So, this is the clothing you're going to want to, at the end of the day, try to farm and get your hands on. If you can get this clothing set, this will be the best you can get, and it will be the best clothing you're going to want to put your enchantment fragments on. I wouldn't really recommend putting any of your enchantments, especially high-level ones, on anything other than the Kefla set, because you're going to very quickly stop using it, like this set. But this set has fairly low enchantments on it, so it's whatever. But you're going to want to put your enchantment fragments on the Kefla set pretty much only. It's going to be the main way you're going to actually get the most amount of use out of them. So in order to get the Kefla set, you would need to do obviously the Broly raid. But specifically, you have to do insane difficulty, because that is the only time you can fight Kefla. So, and her clothing set, as you can see, has fairly low drop rates, which is very unfortunate, but it just is what it is. This is what I would recommend you end up farming for. And on top of that, say you have really bad luck and you can't really seem to get the drops. Well, thankfully, this game has a way of getting around that, where if you go to the Raid Crystal shop, you can actually buy clothing sets from using raid crystals that you get from just completing raids. So this will be helpful. There's Cell Tier 1 clothes in here. There's Cell Tier 2 clothes in here. There's Perfect Cell clothing in here. At the very bottom, there's Broly Z clothing in here. This is where I would recommend you go if your luck isn't really on your side. You can use these raid crystals to acquire clothing that you are missing. Though I would recommend probably not getting these clothings with the raid crystals, because it is a lot for something you're going to end up replacing anyway. But for something like the Broly Z hair, I would definitely recommend buying that. I would also recommend maybe buying the Broly Z pendant, the Broly pendant. I'd maybe recommend getting, and as well as one of these Cell tails. The reason why I'd recommend one of the Cell tails is because it is a specific actual slot that you normally don't actually get. It's called the back slot. It's like your tail slot. Generally, if you have a Saiyan tail, which you get from the monkey, you really don't need it. But that is something I would probably recommend going for. There's also accessories as well, but the whole point of accessories is that not a lot of them give stats, and if they do, they're usually fairly minor. So it's kind of hard to really recommend going for any of these. The exception of the Perfect Cell, helmets. These are definitely something you want to get while you're leveling up. They help out a lot. But they also don't have enchantment stats, so they're really not too important. So sure, they give you stats, but the main thing you want with accessories is you want legendary accessories for the enchantment fragment slot. But that's basically it, really. It's a fairly simple process. Very simple what you want to hunt for. But TLDR, I'll say this. You only really need to worry about clothing until you hit level 2000. Honestly, maybe even higher than that, 2200. That is when the only time you really need to actively worry about the clothing you're wearing. Up until that point, you're kind of just going to be getting the majority of your power through your forms and your stats. Clothing will help, but it's not really necessary. The only clothing that is really necessary is the Kefla set and the Broly Z set, because the Broly Z set will be useful to get the Kefla set. But at the end of the day, clothing in this game is more of what do you like to wear. Like, do you like the look of a certain piece of clothing? And that's generally the most important part. Sure, it'll have stats on it, but it's really... Clothing in this game, thankfully, is mostly more about enchantment slots, which is the legendary clothing, and it's about appearance. So I would only recommend you kind of go for clothing that you want. You don't need to farm every single piece of clothing, but it'll help. So get the Kefla set at the end of the day. That's my TLDR. Get the Kefla set. Focus on getting the Kefla set. That's the only real clothing you actively need to worry about. And I'll also say this because I'm probably sure I might get a question about it. If you want to know how I'm wearing this piece of clothing, but it's not actually what I'm wearing, there is a setting over here under your equip slots called Style. It lets you equip vanity items. So I'm wearing this, but it's on my Style, so that way it pops up on my character. So that's why stats are important, but they're mostly you just want the enchantment slots, and you just want something that you think looks cool. So at the end of the day, that's basically the video. It's fairly all over the place, I'm well aware. I didn't really do a good job with this one, but clothing is kind of hard to talk about, especially with how niche it is until you hit max level. But I hope that if you somehow understood all my ramblings and idiotic comments, you at least got a base bit of information about how to actually do clothing, and I hope it all generally helps you out in the end. That's all I really have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope I was able to help you out. And if you have any questions or comments, just put them in the box below. I'll do my best to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much, and that'll be all for today. Hope you guys have a good day, evening, or night, whenever you're watching this.